She's like my precious, that dragon.
I do. Hi, welcome back. We're the Book Mavens. I'm Rachel. This is Amanda. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about Hobb and Hobb's Tawny Man Trilogy. We're going to be talking about Book 2, The Golden Fool. And if you can see by the cover art, it definitely sparks the imagination. All right, so we have who we think is the Fool with a very, very large tattoo on their back featuring dragons, serpents. And is this some kind of hint as to what kind of content we're going to cover in this book?
It is.
It is. Dun, dun, dun. We're looking at book 8, so we are at the halfway point in Hobb and Hobb's realm of the Elderlings. Oh, yeah. Who knew we would actually get this far? I'm thrilled with us.
I'm very proud of us, actually.
Yes, that we're sticking with it. And we're enjoying it so much. I think that was the big question we got when we decided to read 16 books. And
that neither of us had ever read.
Our reactions of them, yes. And people said, well, you know, what if you don't like them?
I like it.
Yeah. So with this book, we want to get into the political shenanigans that are going on. Hobb and Hobb writes a lot of political intrigue in all of her books. In the Live Ship trilogy, we saw a lot of it with Bingtown and Jamelia, and Chal said that there were a lot of things going on regarding slavery, trading rights, setting up their own kind of city-state away from their mother country and what that looks like. So with the Tawny Man Trilogy, we're back in the Six Duchies. We're back at Buckkeep. And we have Prince Dutiful. We have all of these things going on, kind of continuing from the first book of the trilogy, that there is major conflict happening right now in terms of the Witted. So we have the Old Blood and the Piebalds, which we mentioned briefly in the first video for this trilogy. But not only do we have this conflict going on in terms of traditional magical practices between the Old Blood versus the Piebalds and what's going on, but we also have a betrothal arrangement with Prince Dutiful with the Out Islands, with a princess of theirs, the Narcheska, and arranging that betrothal. But not only do we have that going on, but we also end up with a contingent from Bingtown. And we know what's happening in Bingtown. We know that after the events and the Live Ship traders, they're at war now with Chalced over land rights and a disputed border.
And the slave trade.
So we have a lot juggling. We're juggling a lot of balls in the air.
There's a lot of politics in this
Yes,
book.
And with Catrichan holding all of these things together, she has spent quite a bit of time and energy, her and Shade, in terms of developing this betrothal. We know that there was the Red Ship War that happened with the Six Duchies and the Out Islanders. We covered that in the first Farseer trilogy. That's where we had the Forge, the Pale Woman, and all of that going on. Rob Red, who was the leader of that whole contingent, I guess. And so we're trying to heal those wounds, but now we're also being confronted with a foreign war happening in which could potentially impact the Six Duchies as well. So we've got two things happening on two different fronts. But not only that, internal, external stuff
conflict.
going on.
Here come the spoilers.
But let's talk about Catrichan for a minute, because Catrichan has some good moments in this book. Specifically with Night Eyes, because through this book we really see Fitz coming to terms with the death of Night Eyes, which is
and it's the depth of his grief that is so well written.
But there's a scene in here where Catrichan calls for him to come to her, and she is in tears, that she had not known before that Night Eyes had passed. And so when in the first book of the trilogy that he had come to Buckkeep in terms of trying to skill for Dutiful and do all those things, Night Eyes wasn't in the keep. So Catrichan had not seen Night Eyes since the big adventure in terms of dealing with the dragons from the Farseer trilogy. And Catrichan and Night Eyes had a relationship in that last book of the Farseer trilogy. They hunted together. Night Eyes had a lot of respect for Catricin, and Catricin, because she is slightly witted, could pick up on a lot of things, and she would be just devastated, and she would cry and hold on to Night Eyes, very emotionally connected. And it's her more than anybody else in Fitz's life that really understands what it was like for him to lose Night Eyes. And not just that, because the Fool mourns, but he mourns for Fitz's grief, not Night Eyes for himself. Catricin mourns the loss of Night Eyes, that he's no longer with them. And so it's just a beautiful scene where I think Fitz is really able to confront his grief and let it out, and he just sobs, and they sob together over it. And I think that's just a great cathartic moment for these characters coming together. And you really, I think, get to see the softness of Catricin, because Catricin, like any royalty, any ruling person, has to sacrifice a lot. She talks about it in terms of sacrifice with a capital S, and her relationship with her son and everything else. And to see her being kind of emotionally vulnerable was nice and humanized her.
Yeah,
a
it's
little
real
bit,
rare.
because she makes some tough decisions. She kind of has to. But
when the Bingtown contingent arrives, we see characters that we've met before, like Jack, who we love from the previous books. She has basically been acting as Amber's trade liaison. And so she knows that Amber is connected to Lord Golden, because that's how she's been told to direct her mail to Amber, and then discovers pretty quickly that Amber and Lord Golden are the same, and that Fitz is the one that Paragon was carved after. And in that reunion, Fitz and the Fool have a huge blow in their relationship, like a huge rift develops. So Fitz realizes that he figures out from Jack, like, what are you talking about? I'm a ship. Like, what are you talking about? He figures out, and then he eavesdrops. I don't blame him. And from Lord Golden's reaction of panic when they see Jack and they start talking about Amber, like, he figures out that there's this whole other character that the Fool has played that he knew nothing about. And it festers in him and feeds on Fitz's deepest insecurities about being lied to and used, and not really knowing the people that he's put his trust and faith in. And it really just eats at him. He also hates the idea that, like, people are talking about him, but, like, behind his back in any way. Rumors.
Dutiful confronts him directly and asks if he has a sexual relationship with Lord Golden.
Yeah.
And Fitz, of course, is horrified by that idea. And then Jack kind of calling him out, but referencing Fool as Amber. This whole thing, too, I think connects to the death of Night Eyes. Night Eyes was his connection, this being that he could put his full faith and trust in. And now Night Eyes is gone. And I think he's I don't think he's purposely trying to fill that hole with the Fool, but he relies on his relationship with the Fool, that the Fool is someone he could trust.
He said that when Chade asked him, is there anyone you truly trust? He said the Fool, even before.
Yeah. The only human.
It's the only human that he is. And I do think you're right that it's compounded by his grief for Night Eyes. It plays on his insecurities of being used as this tool all the time.
But he just doesn't know who they are.
Right. And so I totally understand why Fitz confronts him, because Fitz usually totally dances around this.
Fitz likes to shelve things.
Yeah, he's not unaware that the Fool loves him. He's not unaware. In the last book, he's like, call me beloved. I mean, come on now. Like, he knows, but he avoids it. Always has. And then he, in his anger...
I think it's just confusion in general. The fact
that I think he's hurt.
For years had lived as a woman, and that this Jack woman identifies the Fool as a woman, messes with his
little brain
mind.
Is just exploding. He can't process what's happening.
He doesn't know,
and he gets angry because he feels like he feels like that this person he's believed is his friend, that this connection where the Fool is at least honest with him, that's shattered, that it's just another character the Fool's been playing to use him as a tool, which to some extent is correct. Even though the Fool is honest about it, like, you're my catalyst and I'm sorry that I have to use you this way, and you're my wedge, and like, he always feels bad about it, but he still does it. but
brings him back.
Yeah,
death.
they keep bringing him back from death when he just wants to go with Night Eyes.
Oh.
And so I think he's justified in feeling that way. But they have this confrontation about it that they can't take back. And because the fool is like, I love you. The end. And he's like, how could you, blah, blah, blah. And the fool says, I would never have had this conversation with you ever. And now we both have to live with these words for the rest of our lives, which is accurate because they both just keep replaying it as they ignore each other. And the fool is deeply hurt as well because the fool feels like I would never put you in a position that you didn't want to be in terms of a person, like an intimate relationship with me.
Right.
And
he kind of sees love as love.
Yeah.
He would never, put him in a situation where we'd have to, any kind of physical love or anything. He never would have asked that of Fitz. And being confronted that way just really didn't.
Right. And so it really deeply hurts the fool. And Fitz is also hurt. And so I see all sides. Like, I understand why they're hurt. But it also is so frustrating because on both sides, I'm like, Fitz, you knew the answer to this question, but he reacted in anger, as we do. Yeah. The fool, it cannot possibly really be surprised that Fitz interprets this as betrayal. If he, he's, Fitz, you claim to love Fitz, you understand that he's constantly used as a tool, you understand that these are insecurities and deeply held fears that he has. You can't not understand why he would feel that way. And then at the conclusion of this argument, they basically just they freeze each other out. They try to ignore each other. Mm-hmm. And it makes Fitz feel even lonelier. And I can only imagine it makes the fool feel lonely too, because the fool, Fitz is the only one who knows currently at the court, other than, I think Chade and Katrikin know, but he's the only one he doesn't act as Lord Golden around. Fitz is the only one but to Fitz, now he's wondering, is that an all an act too? Like, who really is the fool? And the basis is he still doesn't know. And the fool tries, and this is the thing that I find we talked about this a little bit. The fool gives him information. Fitz just doesn't always understand it.
Well, there's the talk about his upbringing and the pale woman who was working with Robert and with the Out Islands, that she was labeled the White Prophet, right? And by the people who raised the fool as a white one, that it was something had gone wrong for there to be two white ones in one generation, and that something must have gone wrong. The older White Prophet is recognized, is labeled as a woman, that she is the correct one and something went wrong, that he's not really a true prophet. But the fool, this is very convoluted, but the fool knows that they are the true White Prophet, that she's the imposter. She's the imposter, yeah. And so anyway, through all of this training, it's very interesting. They have a tattoo on their back of dragons.
Okay. Again, the issue of Nettle comes up again. And it's the same issue that I had in the Farseer trilogy, is that this expectation that they can decide for Nettle, that they can decide for Fitz as her father. This just assumption just bothers me deeply.
Well, Fitz works very hard to keep Nettle out of any negotiations. I mean, there is paperwork that does label her as a potential heir to the throne if anything happens to Dutiful. If Dutiful dies, then it would go to Nettle. That's all been written down from the time when Nettle had been born. So
much to Fitz's...
He didn't like it, but there are too many things happening, though. And I understand. I don't always like Chade. Chade does things. His character development's been very interesting. I get very frustrated with him at times. But his desire to bring Nettle in because Nettle has the skilling ability is not just selfishly motivated. There's a lot of it, too, about protecting Nettle. And the fact of the matter is that they know, from Fitz not being trained in the wit and that he was abused in the skill, that it is important to understand these magics. And if you're not going to teach them how to understand this, it makes them vulnerable to outside threats. They can't protect themselves very well. So it's also about protecting Nettle. And you can look at it from the perspective of protecting a potential heir to the throne, but it's also Fitz's daughter. And Chade and Katrikin feel very deeply for Fitz. Do they use him as a tool? Absolutely,
Yeah.
but that doesn't stop
But I
them
think
from
it's,
loving
as I
him
say,
as
I think it's
well.
about different definitions of protection, because Fitz believes that she is protected by not knowing and by being safely in Burke and Molly's care and being as far away from Buckkeep politics as possible. And that's the difference, is because
You can't maintain it forever, though.
well, but I don't see why not, in the sense of, like,
Well, just being who he is and his position in this court.
well, and what, but here's the
And
thing,
how he's
what would
used
Molly's
makes everyone else
position be?
vulnerable.
Molly comes to become an assassin's apprentice. Molly comes to be trained in an assassin.
Molly has
comes
nothing
to be.
to do with it because she's not connected to him in any way.
Well, this
It's
is
all
what
about Nettle.
Well, there would be, but Fitz very correctly identifies there would be no way to bring her here and to train her in this role and her not know, which would destroy every illusion she has of her family. It would destroy the illusion that her family, that Molly and Burke have of each other, that Fitz is gone. I think Fitz, and here's the thing, again, because she's not a legitimate child, what is her role? And so Fitz sees to just spare her from that, because there's a like, look at Chade. Chade spends so much of the book, once he recognizes that he has the skill, and he's talked about it since you've known him, about how he was denied the opportunity to learn the skill, and it's eaten at him his entire life.
I think he thinks that's going to happen with Nettle if she's denied this knowledge.
Well, and I think Fitz sees the other hand, because he sees knowing and watching what your life would be if you were born to a different person, like if you were more Farseer or the recognized Farseer. I think he's sparing her that, because I mean, he's pretending to be a servant right now, and that bothers everybody, but they don't change it because they don't want to publicly draw the fact that he's alive. I mean, like, I get why they do it,
But they would have.
I think Fitz is.
I think they would have let him come back. I mean, they talk about the idea of him not, but if they brought Nettle forward and recognized her that way, everything would be brought to light. It would have to be. There's no other way to do it. So there are consequences to every action. But my big thing is that knowledge is power. If I had these capabilities and somebody refused to train me to understand how they work so I could protect myself, I'd be upset.
Maybe, and I have a suspicion that it will come to play, because they
Well,
put out
of
a skill call.
Yeah.
Which I'm so shocked that Fitz was not furious about, to be honest. So
I think he is delaying the inevitable, and I do think that Fitz realizes that it's inevitable for Nettle to get into this situation. I think he's trying to. Yeah, I do. There's no way to avoid it. It's just, it is what it is. And the fact of the matter is that Dutiful, knowing that there are other people out there with the skill ability, is going to seek them out himself. And so Dutiful has been left in the dark for a lot of exactly like who Tom Badgerlock really is. He finds out in this one.
yeah, he found.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not dumb. Dutiful's not dumb.
No, he's not. I like
And
Dutiful. I
eventually,
think Dutiful's a great character.
at the end, because in the rescuing of his friend, which Dutiful sent him in, he says, he's in trouble. I need you to go save him. And that's when he has that conference. Sybil,
Yes.
You need to go save Sybil. He's my friend. And Tom just goes. Fitz goes. And that is what leads him to be in jail. And then in the time it takes them to concoct a way to get him out of prison, he basically is about to die from an infection from his wounds. And they use the skill healing the same way in the live ships that Kenneth did to save Wintro, like with the dragon's knowledge. He went in and healed him the same way Fitz had healed Night Eyes in the last book. They heal him, and this is what forms the coterie, right? That they're going to take forward. So it's him and Chade and the Fool and
Thick
and Dutiful. We'll come back to Thick. But in that process, it comes to, like, they give too much away. They call him Fitz. They give too much away, and so his mom sits him down at Fitz's bedside. It turns out, why Fitz is
Katrina talks to Dutiful.
Yeah, basically comatose, healing. She lays out the whole thing for him, tells him the whole thing, and so now he knows.
He doesn't know about Nettle. He doesn't know that.
No, he doesn't know about Nettle, but he knows who Fitz is and why Fitz is dead and his role in the dragon. Like, he knows about Fitz. He doesn't understand
everything.
He doesn't know about Nettle and Molly. But to be honest, he doesn't need to right now. Like, that's not a part of Ketteren's story with Fitz in terms of who Fitz is to her.
Ketteren wants him to know everything.
Well, that's true. Well, she's probably
but
tired
respects Fitz's. I mean, because Fitz is an adult. He's in his 30s. He's in his mid-30s at this point. You know, he says, you know, look, this is my daughter. If you want my cooperation, this is what he laid out in the first book. You are going to have to give me some things too. And the big thing that he is really is his relationship with Nettle, and Nettle not finding out any of these things. And I get that he doesn't want to throw this big boulder in the calm pond that is Burke and Molly's life. Like, I get it. I understand that. But it's just one of these things that if he made this decision to come back to Buckkeep, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time because of the position.
But I was to say, but I totally understand him because he's trying. He knows how much knowing him and being with him has cost them, and for him to be alive this whole time would just destroy them again. They found some peace,
but there's so much with Burke. There's a major price to be paid for this because Burke has beaten himself up for all of these years.
It would be no different. Guilt. I mean, right. I was going to say, so you want to rehash and add on to that guilt that he married Molly and they have a family?
There's a point where you need to be like Elsa and just be able to let it go. Those 15 years are those 15 years.
Burke's never been the kind of person to let things go. Like,
but to have suffered with the loss of Fitz.
I think he'd have suffered no matter what.
Well, I mean, I don't think that he would have gotten together with Molly because of that, but they did. There's no reversing time. This isn't a time travel book.
Well, that would be an interesting twist.
So,
but, let's put a pin in that.
It is what it is, and yes, I think at this time Burke would feel a sense of guilt in terms of staying with Molly. But there's also, you know, Burke's getting up there in age too, and that's something that's brought up in this. That his limp is even worse. He's got cataracts. He can't see very well. There is quite an age difference between he and Molly. I mean, we do get to see some people from Bingtown from the Live Ship Traders trilogy reappear. So there's the contingent that comes from Bingtown because they're trying to get the Six Duchies to ally with them against Chalced because they have this ongoing war. And so we see Selden again, which is cool. But Jack comes back.
There's a moment where
he was best buddies with Amber.
They're all hooded, and so you, the reader, we know that it's somebody from the Rain Wilds, and so you're like, oh my gosh, who is it? And then he takes out the head, and it's Selden, and you're like, and it's like the crowd goes wild in my mind, and I was like, yay, Selden!
He's very dragon-like now.
And then he's exactly as I anticipated he would be. Like, he is loyal to Tantaglia.
Well,
and like he's gone like full into. He's got some of the scaling and the characteristics that we talked about in earlier videos.
He also has some kind of magical connection, not just to Tantaglia, which we already knew, but to be able to pick up on skill use. I don't know so much about the wit, but the skill use
he does seem to like. He seems to be very sensitive to it. The dragon is aware of Fitz and thus Shelton, and so there's this interaction because the dragon is like, why are you important to me? Tantaglia is very Tantaglia.
Town traders come and they're talking about Tantaglia. They reveal a lot of their kind of more secretive information, just trying to get them to understand the plight. And so
there's the moment we all knew was going to happen. Selden is like, I speak for the dragon, not, I'm not really interested in trade. I speak for the dragon. And then he like lays it out about how great Tantaglia is and she's the last true dragon. And he's saying it to Kettering and she loses her stuff on him. And she like gets up. How dare you?
Well, you gotta back
talk about the last true dragon. No, it's just such a great scene because it's so great to see Kettering kind of lose it a little bit because she's always like, stone face, poker face. And then when she's talking about he's like, oh, and the Magnificent, she's the last true dragon and it would be so great for you to have this dragon on the side. And she's like, how dare you come in here? Our Six Duchies dragons are real dragons. And she just comes at him. And he immediately, to his credit, immediately recognizes he has made a critical error. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm young, I didn't know. And she goes, that's the only reason I'm going to forgive you is because
he wasn't alive when the Six Duchies dragons existed.
And Kettering says that. She's like, but I'm going to get that you need to check yourself.
Yeah.
She
does get upset. I mean, they work it out. But I mean, it is this idea that when we read the Live Ship Traders and you hear about them in terms of hearing about the Six Duchies dragons and they'll roll their eyes and think that it's fake. Well, it's the same thing for... There's such a lack of information that's being shared between the events happening in Bingtown and what happened in the Six Duchies, and they just don't really believe their own legends. It was just a kerfuffle.
I liked it. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Well,
Trickon definitely gets in her feelings about that, because we know, not everybody else, obviously the Dukes, everybody doesn't know that. I mean, the big black dragon that she rides in on was Verity. And so that amount of sacrifice and her connection to them, I mean, that's obviously very emotional for her. The Narcheska. So she also has a large dragon tattoo on her back.
Dragons. There's multiple.
Are there multiple ones?
Yeah, because she talks about the one. She says, like, I think it's the green one. She said
there's a scene where she's like burning up, and Piotr,
her uncle,
yes,
is bringing snow. She's laying on snow trying to get her back to,
and it's all like risen up on her back. And so Fitz, has been squirreling around in the walls of the keep, spying, and he's like, it was a total, I think, WTF moment for Fitz. He's like, he has no idea what's going on. There's a servant woman who is
has a very strange dynamic.
Possessed by something. I think it's the pale woman. I think the pale woman is using the servant woman. I think
I don't know if she's. I was to say, I don't know if she's possessing her, but I think she certainly represents her. If she, I mean, maybe she has a relationship the way, like, with the skill in some form.
She's communing back.
Yeah, but she's the one, when Fitz confronts the piebalds, he sees that servant. He goes, "She didn't leave. She's here."
Yes.
Like, which is another clue that there's way more to this tale. But yeah, it turns out that the Fool and the Narcheska have these same dragon tattoos. And it's suspected, because the Fool knows that the pale one is the one who ordered that they do that to him, that they put those tattoos on him when he was still,
in some way.
When he was still where he's from, in the care of these, wise teachers, these wise people, and that she said, do this, and they did it because she's the white prophet, and you just do what they say. And but he recognizes the tattoos that are described that she has. So now there's this clear connection, and it's always suspicious. There's always something going on there about why her father is the one, because it's a matriarchal society. So your connection to your mother's house.
They don't understand each other's cultures at all.
That's true. There's a lot of miscommunication. She's much closer to her uncle, her mother's brother, than she is to her father, because that's how their society's set up. You are tied to your mother's house, because the men are often off, fighting and fishing, and they're pillaging
as they do.
So you're tied to your mother's house. So the relationship she has with her mother's brother is much more closely aligned, which makes it curious that it's her father who's offering up and negotiating for this.
There's a lot of things we don't know.
There's so many curiosities, and I am very excited for us in the next book. In the next book, we're going to the Out Islands. We're going to the Out Islands. And
there's a challenge that's been issued.
A little Romeo and Juliet moment where I was like, okay.
But it's children. So Prince Dutiful is 15. The Narcheska has been labeled as 11. Turns out she's not really 11. She's 12.
Which doesn't make a huge difference, but it does. But it doesn't.
Anyway, so it reminds me of like Malta, and I mean they're just young, and they're young, in these very adult roles.
They are, and that's true. And he makes a gaffe. He makes a gaffe, and he ends up insulting her, and that puts us on this it completely changes her attitude. She's like, I'm already an adult in the eyes of my people, and you're just a prince. Which I have to admit, she totally miscalculates on that one, because so in the course of this challenge. She's not actually, they're a very loosely connected country, these Out Islands. It's not like the Six Duchies where there's a clear leader. It's more of this is a powerful house who has a lot of influence within the circle of these things. Like, she's not a true princess in the sense that the way the Six Duchies looks at it. And so she issues this challenge, since you have no title and there's no guarantee that you'll become a king, I'm not going to tie my hand to you unless you prove yourself worthy by accepting this challenge. then he issues this challenge. And then he, of course, talks back. He's like, well, you're not going to be you will never be the queen of anything unless you marry me. So I'm going to demand a challenge of you to prove you're worthy. And that sets us off. And you're just like, you're back there and everybody in the audience is like, oh my gosh, don't do this. No. Everybody, pull back. Too late. They've already issued the challenges. Everybody's publicly accepted. Off we go.
The challenge is, and of course the Bingtown traders know about this as well,
because they're still there. That's the other thing too. Is like, somebody says it. They're like, oh, this could have waited. They could have waited 2 more days. They would be gone, and we wouldn't be dealing with these things on top of each other. Oh my gosh, the Out Islanders were horrified at the idea of the 6 duchies aligning themselves with dragon breeders. They say it like this nasty insult. Like, they are highly suspicious and antagonistic about the Bingtown traders, and particularly about the Rainwild contingent. Like,
oh, well,
they're
Sheldon,
like, don't want nothing to do with that. Like, scared of it. Like, step back, kind of. And which is, again, very interesting. So the challenge.
I have theories, but yes.
Okay, tell us the challenge. I want to hear your theories. Let's hear it.
Well, hold on. Well, let's talk about the challenge. The challenge is that there is this famed ice dragon, fire, right? Something like that.
Sure.
Spelled funky, but I think that's how you would say it.
We're doing our best, guys.
This black dragon that's encased in ice on one of their islands. And the challenge is that Dutiful has to go and slay the dragon like knights of yore, and cut off the head of the dragon and present it at the Narcheska's feet. That's the challenge. So he issues back is that she has to go and bear witness to this slaying of the dragon. So that is the challenge that's exchanged. They both accept. And so that is where, of course, our 3rd book is going to take us in this big challenge and hunting for this dragon and finding it.
And this is where Tantaglia keeps coming back into people's minds, because Tantaglia can communicate.
Well, Sheldon's watching all of this,
she
and
can
then
communicate.
All of a sudden, boom,
and then like
Tantaglia is like,
Fitz is being bombarded in his dreams. She's popping up in the skill dreams with Molly. She's everywhere, and she
wants to know about this black dragon.
Tell me about this dragon.
Well, because all of the serpents you see in the live features is just dying to get them there. These serpents just aren't cutting the mustard. I mean, they're really, really weak. And the thing is about dragons is that they mate in flight. And these dragons can't fly.
Yikesies.
So she's the last of a truly mature, fully functioning dragon.
Yeah,
and so if there's a surviving male dragon.
Yeah. I get it. I get it.
Like, that's a big thing.
They're supposed, and that's the thing, you do get an upgrade on the dragons. They're supposed to be born like mature adults, but these ones are born, they can't fly, they're very weak, and they can't hunt for themselves. So Tantaglia is actually like wearing herself ragged,
tied to that,
feeding them, and like that's why she doesn't go. That's why she doesn't come to ask for, bargain for herself and sins.
Well, that would be
seldom
interesting,
like,
if she were to land there in the middle
that would be
Buckkeep. That would be cool.
That'd be kind of cool.
That would be kind of cool.
Maybe that'll happen.
I don't know.
This next series after this is 4 dragon books. Like, they're all got dragon in the title, so.
All right. So Sheldon, meanwhile, is trying to like corner Fitz in this big confrontation with Tantaglia. He knows there's something more to Fitz.
And Fitz is playing coy. He is like,
I don't know about dragons. He doesn't even, it's just too much. Plus, there's all the things still going on.
Bless his heart.
The witted. Once again, this is a survival story. She's trying to get her species to survive. Now, here's theory time.
Projections.
Theory time. Okay, so the Pale Woman is controlling things happening in the Out Islands. That's why there are things going on that are confusing that we don't know about. She is playing a long game here, and I think that long game comes with the destruction of the dragons. I think this is why she has this power. She has some kind of sway. I think it has to do with having the Narcheska's mother and sister. She's got female relatives that are MIA. There's something going on.
Something's
she
happening
has
there.
Some control over the Narcheska, the most powerful family in the Out Islands, with the red ship stuff going on. It's all connected. So I think it really has to do with when they're talking about the deal with the Fool and talking about having to go up against this false prophet, that she's looking to destroy the world to have it be rebuilt again, where he's looking to or they're looking to preserve the world and save it. So 2 different angles. So I think what's happening, and the role of the dragons is that they're an integral piece of this world being able to function.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Pale Woman is looking to destroy all dragons. So I think that's why the challenge is being issued to kill the last male dragon, meaning that the dragons, they'll be done. They won't be able to survive. So I think that's why the Narcheska issues that challenge. She's being controlled by the Pale Woman. And meanwhile, you have the Fool who gets drunk and tells Fitz that this seeking the dragon will result in their death.
At least this time it'll be my turn to die. And Fitz is like, excuse me?
No.
So that's supposed to be comforting?
So Fitz isn't about that. So they're planning all of these things, and they've been lying to the Fool, like the Fool's going to go. Meanwhile, they're like, they have this whole plan to leave the Fool at Buckkeep and go without them because
which is honestly,
they're trying to save their life. But
it's honestly like insultingly amateur.
It is so
because they're like at the last moment, we'll just tell him when we get down there we miscounted and there's no room on the boat. You can come on a later boat,
and that the Fool won't figure something out.
I was going to say, I was like, the Fool has successfully maintained 3 separate identities
for years,
and like. Sometimes at the same time. And you're like, come on now. And they're like, and then I'll just make sure there's never a boat that can take him. And I'm like, okay. There's no way that's going to work.
Fingers crossed, hoping for a Paragon
I really would.
appearance.
I would love to see Paragon and Fitz talk.
Oh, that would be great.
You're like,
I would love it.
You look like me.
Now, that being said, so my theory, this is what it's going to come to, is head-to-head. It's really about the preservation of the dragons. The Fool is absolutely against slaying the dragon. See, this is why Shade wants to leave the Fool. Regardless of the Fool dying, it's really about the succession of, or the successful completion of this mission to preserve this relationship between the Out Islanders and the 6 duchies, is that he has to slay the dragon. Dutiful has to slay the dragon, and the Fool says, no, the dragon must be saved. So they don't want the Fool's interference.
The Fool says to Fitz, at the end, I will let you choose to save the world with me or to fulfill your duty to the Farseers.
And Shade is like,
Shade just is, and again, Shade
is very...
Shade just assumes,
Shade
like,
is shady.
Of course, well, I mean, he says, naturally, you'll choose the Farseers. And I'm like, I don't know. But then you have the whole dutiful, I don't know, guys. This is going to be buckle up. This is going to be a good ride. I am excited.
Yes, I really like to know from you guys who have read the books. Don't spoil it for us, of course, but are we on the right track with this whole thing with the false prophet and the real white prophet? Like, what's going on with these dragons? Are we on the right track with this? And it's really about preserving the dragon race, so that's going to save the world, right? I think that's what it's about.
We'll see. Tell us in the comments.
So. Yeah, let us know. And it's just fascinating.
All right, rating this book. It's interesting that both of us ended up staying way past our bedtimes because we were just so into it. Because you just want to know what happened. So I'm gonna choose. This is for me. This is a Diet Coke after 3 p.m. It's caffeine that will keep you up at night. Like, this is a adventure. And if I have that much caffeine after about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I am not going to sleep. Just what happened with this book.
Well, there's so much political intrigue. And then I have to know what's going to happen. This book is just soaked in that feeling. You have to keep going. You want to keep reading because you want to know what's happening. But of course, Robin Hobb, once again, got the call from the editor saying, okay, you hit your
word count to stop.
Just stop writing. And so you are left with, okay, so they're about to go on this journey, and you're just like,
and it's not even like, oh, they're on the boat going. It's it's like a week before, and they're just like, and the boat just stops. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Good thing I have the next book ready to go.
Yes.
I will admit, if I was reading these as they had come out, and then there was like going to be a long break before I got the next book, I would be so upset. I'd be
You
so
wanna-
upset.
you
You
wanna
want to
keep
just
going.
immediately pick up and keep going. It was hard to go to bed even as late as I stayed up reading. It was really hard to go to bed and not just pick up the next one and keep going.
It was really hard. This is definitely a caffeinated beverage for me. This is something that you want to keep going. If it's like just like a triple shot, just sugary, like delicious, I don't know, Starbucks extravaganza kind of book. But you're going to want to keep going. This is not one that's really easy to put down and come back to, because you do want to see the outcomes of these situations. You want to know how Bingtown's connected. You want to know more about the dragons. You want to know more about Narchesca. So we have officially passed our halfway point, and now we will be on book 3, Fool's Fate. It is a hefty read, like all of her thirds and all of her trilogies, so we are definitely looking forward to jumping back in with Fitz and the Fool and figure out what's going on with this ice dragon. To slay or not to slay? That is the question.
That is always the question.
All right. Like and subscribe. Please follow along with us. We'd love to hear from you. Please comment down below, and we would be more than happy to continue a conversation about these books with you then. And we will see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Bye. You gotta wave, Rachel, because I'm the only one who waves, and then I feel stupid. You're so cool and calm. You're just like, bye now. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.